Today on Independent Wrestling Profiles, we're talking with the Otaku Nilo Reyes. When did you first get exposed to wrestling? When did it enter your life? When did you first witness the industry?
A long time ago, at the tender age of 2 years old, my father had these wrestling tapes of like Hulk Hogan. And the very first thing I really remember was this steel cage match between Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan. And that's all I wanted to watch.
Even at 2 years old, you already knew that you were kind of interested in this?
Yeah, and like I would even go to like say a relative's place, and I'd be like wrestling. If it was a birthday party, I'd be wrestling a balloon. So like my mom would like literally like ring the bell, ding ding ding, and then I would start wrestling this balloon.
So it was like a family exposure at the age of 2, and then you just kind of went along with it?
Absolutely.
As you're progressing through this fandom, you're going through different eras of wrestling, you're seeing different competitors and different matches. Was there any that really stood out to you as inspirational or just absolutely must-see TV, or the ones that kept you tuning in? Like, what were some of your absolute favorite aspects of it?
I was a big fan of Bret Hart, and like I would always try to like cut promos like him at like this was like later stages of enjoying wrestling was well more like 5 years old. I would like have this fanny pack and I would start like trying to cut a promo and wasn't very good at it. But just trying to like imitate Bret Hart. But like as I got older, The Rock really stood out to me because well as Rocky Maivia, just the blue chipper. For some reason, like that very bland version of The Rock, I really like resonated with.
Well, that's a really unique answer.
Yeah.
What was it about that version where, I mean, obviously he broke out with the charisma, with the promo, especially the in-ring work later, but the Rocky Maivia was not really well known for, we'll say, the character work.
Not really, no. But for some reason, that was the guy I wanted to see. And I remember being at a Zellers and seeing the Rocky Maivia action figure for the first time. I was just like, Dad, I need this.
And were you all in on his evolution for like from that point on? Did you still stick with it or?
So I was disappointed when he turned heel because, again, when you're a young fan, seeing your hero turn into a bad guy was just like heartbreaking in a sense. But over time, and the more you grow up with wrestling, you start to appreciate that kind of stuff of like how somebody can work both ways on it, be the good guy, be the bad guy.
It takes a lot to be able to get the crowd on both ends. So, as a seasoned wrestling fan now at the age of 5 or just after, have you had an opportunity to go to any live shows, whether they be like a traveling WWE house show, or I don't know if you were exposed to independent wrestling that early, or maybe that's something that came around later, but did you get to experience a live crowd at any point?
It wasn't until like I was in my early teens, maybe about 14, 15. My cousin actually took me to a live event that was in town here. And I was a big fan of like Rob Van Dam. And I'm like, I get to see Rob Van Dam. I get to see Randy Orton. So we were like, it wasn't quite nosebleeds, but we were pretty far. But I got to see wrestling.
Where was that show?
Guelph.
Guelph. Okay, so
Yeah.
not far from here.
Yes.
I actually remember there was a period of time where WWE didn't come to this area for like the longest time, and then Raw and SmackDown came like within 2 years to the Kitchener Auditorium like twice, and then
Yes.
disappeared again. And I was like, "What? Where did they go?" But it was a
Yeah.
rare opportunity to see it. So, how did that live crowd impact you now that you've been taken away from seeing it on television and you're actually feeling, the chanting, you're feeling the people around you, you're feeling the performers just in person as opposed to like this distant illusion on a television. Did that spurn you on even further?
A little bit. I I had those like Rob Van Dam thumbs. So I was just like like when he had his match, I was just trying to be like, "Hey, I'm over here, pay attention to me." But like, yeah, it was fun to watch for sure because that was again my very first experience with that. And yeah, that was my first taste of live wrestling. And looking back in retrospect, it's crazy to like see where all those people were gone. And what they've how their careers have spurned since then.
Take me through where you were in life at this point, some years later, where you decided that you wanted to take that step to turn your fandom into an actual profession. How did you decide to start actually training now?
So that didn't start until like my later years of 29 years old. So I had a relative of mine, my cousin, he was the one who took me to like all these live shows, and we've always been like wrestling fans. He got into like journalism, and he met a guy where he was working way up north in Sudbury who was actually named El Tornado, who's a pretty famous indie wrestler around Southern Ontario and Northern Ontario. So they became friends and said, "Hey, I'm working a show in Kitchener. Why don't you come watch me?" So then my cousin told me about that, and yeah, we decided to go check it out. Saw that the place doubled as a wrestling school,
Okay.
and yeah, as a crossbody pro wrestling, and I was just like, "Holy crap, I can learn how to do this." So it kept going to a few shows, and then eventually in 2018, I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a try.
Okay, so part of the decision was based on discovering that it was actually within proximity for you and very much more attainable, where, perhaps if there was a wrestling school that you're going to have to travel for or whatever. So being close to home really helped.
A little bit, yes. But yeah, like I knew there was like schools in Hamilton and Toronto. I would have been willing to go, but again, it was just I was at 30, I didn't or 29, 30, just not thinking about it and discovered that. And here I am now.
So you go into the wrestling school for the first time. Do you recall any of your thoughts or feelings that you had when you first started? Maybe some fears or trepidations that you experienced, or maybe just something that you were super excited for? Like, do you remember what it was like kind of taking that first step?
Yes. So I just sent an email to one of the coaches there, and they said, "Yeah, come for a tryout." And they were doing a deck of cards workout, and I was like, "What's that?" And then they so they put me through the deck of cards workout, and I could not walk for like 3 days.
But that didn't deter you?
No. I was like, I'm gonna do this, and I was determined to go back in there. So maybe about March of that year, I was like, okay, I'm fully into this now.
As you're kind of starting into it and getting going, is there anything that you're finding particularly challenging or that was maybe an element of the wrestling side that you didn't necessarily think about going into it?
I wouldn't think that anything really troubled me. It was more so the fact that like I just had to try a whole bunch of new stuff. I was pretty athletic from high school. I did high school wrestling, played a lot of basketball, and a lot of those things just kind of like transferred into it. And again, just watching wrestling for many years, so I'm like, oh, I know that move. I can give that a try. I think the hardest part definitely would be like trying to get out of your comfort zone to try a lot of things. I still find it hard to like go up to the top rope without thinking, oh crap, there's something bad to go wrong.
And not to say that you're old by any means, but you hear stories about people that start training in wrestling when they're in their teenage years, when they're starting out super early. Did you find that, at the age of 29, that maybe you were a little bit more behind the eight ball, that you had to play a bit more catch up, that you had to work a little bit harder to kind of get to a point where you could be comfortable actually in the ring?
Not necessarily, because I felt that just being there consistently and just wanting to learn every day, that drove me the most, was because like I really just wanted to do this, and I have so much fun just being in class and just talking with other people who are very like-minded and bring out the best in me.
Okay, so you have a foundation, a source of knowledge, soundboards, people that you can actually kind of absorb this knowledge from that you might have been lacking at the time.
Yes.
Okay, so what leads up to your first match? Okay, so you're training for some period of time, you're doing your deck of cards workouts, you're feeling the bumps every single day, but
Yeah.
where does it actually happen that you find out like, okay, I'm actually going to be on a show now?
Well, we were told by Coach Ben Ortmans to just put a match together. It was myself and a guy named Mikey Jenkins. And yeah, we're just trying to like figure out like, well, we put the match together, and then everything just felt seamless and smooth. Afterwards, Coach pulled me aside and I'm like, I hope you're ready to take that to the show now. I'm like, like I've been working so hard for this to finally get here, and now I'm here.
So he didn't tell you that it was going to be for the show. It was almost like a practice
Yeah,
routine or something like that. And he was just like,
yeah,
oh, by the way, you're
yeah,
doing this in front of an audience now.
yes.
And I noticed a little bit of expression on your face there. Like how did you feel finding out like, oh man, I'm actually going to do this in the ring? Like, was it a moment of elation? All of this work, all of this time that you had put in is coming to fruition? Or was there still a little bit of, oh geez, I hope I don't mess this up?
No, I definitely didn't feel the OG's part of it. It was definitely more elation because, again, going into the world going into a pause in the pandemic and missing wrestling that much and having things kind of happen to you, depression hits hard. You know, you can't go out and be athletic. You can't practice a lot of your stuff because you don't have a ring. But just all that hard work, it felt like I made it. It just felt unreal. And again, hard work, they say pays off, and that definitely paid off.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, because
Yeah.
obviously the pandemic would have been a factor for you if you had started training in, you said 2018?
Yes.
Okay, so it must have been really difficult to kind of start your training and then have it put to a dead halt for the pandemic. And
Yep.
I'm assuming was your first match before or after the pandemic?
It was after the pandemic, September 16th, 2022.
Oh, okay. So how did you stay kind of involved in the wrestling industry during the pandemic? Were you able to do any training? Were you able to work on promos? How do you stop the momentum from completely dying out while the world is kind of on a shutdown?
Oh, we tried everything from like doing like the coaches had like Zoom meeting classes of like, okay, we're gonna do our deck of cards workout together, and all of us are on webcam and we all help each other kind of deal. I think there was Warhorse who did like this promo trend where it's like we want you to cut 5 promos within the month and just post them, and yeah, I'll have a look at them. And I think I may have posted maybe about 2 or 3 because again, like wasn't that confident in my promos at that point.
How are you feeling about them now?
Um, a little bit better. I feel like if I could like just kind of talk, I feel a lot more comfortable.
Okay, so it's a little bit more of the pre-structured things that get to you. Are you a little bit more comfortable just kind of off the cuff?
Uh, Depends. Yes, this is definitely a weak aspect of my game, but again, practice makes progress.
Perfect, perfect. So you had that match. You have that moment
Yep.
of elevation. Since then, have you had any other like kind of surreal moments? Maybe not as grandiose, but whether it was just like, you're having a match with a particular competitor and you're like, I can't believe I'm like just kind of stop and take it in for a minute. It's like, this isn't a one-time thing. Like I'm a wrestler.
Yeah, I've had a few of those actually. I could pinpoint maybe 2.
Okay.
There was a surprise guest for at Crossbody one time, and it was Speedball Mike Bailey,
Oh.
and he basically wanted to wrestle everyone on our roster, and yeah, I was in a 4-way with Speedball Mike Bailey, Mikey Jenkins, Rajan Husher, but like getting to a moment where in the match where I got set up Speedball for the Rainmaker, ripped him out, and he ducked, and I was like, he ducked my clothesline. Awesome. Pops up, sky high, pin, 1, 2, kick out. I was like, I'm in there with a TNA pro, a signed wrestler, and that one of the best in the world, absolutely. And like I adore Speedball with all my heart.
If Speedball Mike Bailey shows up where you are and wants to wrestle everyone, you let him wrestle everyone.
Yeah, pretty much. And I guess the second would be I was just going to like help at a show IWS in Montreal. You don't expect much. You just try to like put the ring together, make the show the best that it can while you're on the side kind of deal. You do whatever the promoter asks you to do, and one particular time he pulled me aside and it's like, "Do you have your gear?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he's like, "I think I might have a spot for you." And this was live on like Fight TV, Triller Plus. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be on pay-per-view." Holy crap. So as soon as I hit that curtain, I'm like, "Okay, we're on pay-per-view. Let's go."
Oh man, that's an amazing feeling. It must have been. I mean, especially if you weren't expecting it to get in there. So you competed in Montreal then. Is there anywhere else that you kind of have on the bucket list for the near future? Any cities or companies that you're kind of hoping that you can hit?
The big one for me is would be C4 Wrestling in Ottawa. I
Okay.
would love to make it out there just to like take in the show and help out as best as I can. If I get booked, awesome. If I don't, that's cool. I just want to enjoy the show. I would love to head out west, one of those promotions, maybe 365 or Love Wrestling, somewhere out in Halifax as well. Like I'd love to go all over Canada.
Oh, that's awesome. So I do want to ask, I mean, we've had a couple nice surreal moments there, but I have to imagine that also like winning gold would probably be a big moment for you as well. If I'm not mistaken, you're currently a tag team champion?
Yes, we're there. Laurel Cassidy and myself are the crossbody tag team champions, 2 times.
Do you recall
Yeah.
the feeling of lifting a belt for that first time?
Yes. So at the finish of the match, I just let out this huge scream. And then I remember CM Punk was on, I think, Jimmy Fallon one time, and he says that, like, whenever you get a chance, you just, like, make this metaphorical snow angel. So I actually did that at the end of the match, was like, I laid down in the middle of the ring and made a snow angel.
I'm sure that's not the most common celebration, but I mean, sometimes those emotions, they just gotta come out, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask, like, how did that tandem come to be?
Ben just saw us, like myself and Laurel, just being this tandem, a very oddball tandem, because saw that Laurel had been doing this for quite some time and wasn't making any progress, and I just started, so that maybe I could take in her knowledge and we can move forward together. Uh, Also, I believe Speedball helped with this as well,
Okay.
because we he paired us in a match together, like one on one with each other. And then Ben just kind of spurred that idea that okay, these two are going to be they're going to be a tandem. And then yeah, just it's neat having like an intergender tag team. Definitely sticks out, and very much for intergender wrestling. That's how I feel. Just it should be a thing, even in tag teams.
Yeah, and I've noticed that with especially like crossbody where you've been performing a little bit more regularly, that does happen a little bit more often. I've seen the Kawaii Kids, I've seen Empire teaming together, and like
Yeah.
intergender wrestling is a little bit more embraced there. Is that something that you would like to see happen like on more of a wide scale as well?
Oh, absolutely. Why not? We're all performers, right? Whether you're male, female, sorry, he, him, she, her, whatever your pronouns are, if you enjoy wrestling, you should be able to enjoy wrestling with somebody else, no matter what their gender is.
Yeah, nobody should stop you from being able to beat somebody else up.
Within the wrestling context, obviously.
Absolutely, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Do you mind if we step outside of the world of wrestling for a minute?
Sure.
In your free time, you're not in the ring, you're not doing your beloved, deck of cards training. What do you like to do to pass the time?
A lot of things. I play a lot of video games. I read a lot of manga. So that's kind of works into the wrestling as well because the otaku is he's just a fan. That's how I see the character is that he loves anime, he loves video games, he loves wrestling, and he just wants to embrace it and be in it. And it's basically just myself turned up to 11, as people say.
Is there any particular mangas that you prefer or that are at the top of your list?
I'm currently reading One Piece, which is uh,
An endeavor.
an endeavor for sure. But yeah, I've delved into that and I'm enjoying it immensely. Another one would be the very popular one right now is Don to Don. It's on Netflix and has weekly episodes. So I've just been enjoying that because it's the strangest romantic comedy I've ever watched because
Okay.
it involves like ghosts and aliens, and they're just kind of infecting this couple who are like an oddball couple. It's just a wild ride. I highly recommend it.
And obviously, I've been speaking to a few people recently, and video games comes up as a very common pastime amongst
Yep.
wrestlers. What I would like to ask you is what I often ask when I hear video games is, can you give me your top three?
Top three.
Not the best,
Well,
just your top three.
that's top. Well, if I give you like an answer right away, one of them would definitely be Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Okay. So the four extra characters, or was that introduced in tournament?
That was the four extra characters, but they also added Akuma at
Oh,
the
okay.
end as the final boss. Yeah.
Okay. Are we
So
talking
yeah.
Street Fighter or arcade? Or
Uh,
sorry, Super Nintendo or arcade, not Street Fighter. Obviously, we're talking Street Fighter.
well, before wrestling, I was actually into like competitive fighting games, and that's what I did for a very long time. I've got the experience of like playing like the full arcade versions a lot, so I definitely prefer the arcade version.
Okay. And the other two?
Probably Resident Evil 4. No matter what, they had like the remake recently. But no matter what, I always find myself wanting to go back and play the game, and I've never really had that with a game before, especially as one that's so linear with a story.
Well, it was a monumental title for the franchise. Get away from the tank controls, tell a fantastic narrative. I remember when I was in college seeing commercials for it on the GameCube, and I'm like, come out on PlayStation. I don't have this.
Oh, PlayStation didn't get the chainsaw controller though.
No.
Would have been fun.
And one more.
If I had to pick, it would be Rock Band 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Uh, I've done a lot in my life, and music is definitely one of them. And I've always had a joy playing like those music games. And yeah, still to this day, I'm playing Rock Band.
I don't hear people reference the games with the big peripherals too much. I remember working at EB Games when Rock Band came out. We didn't even have anywhere to store all these things. So,
Mhm.
what was your instrument of choice?
Drums. I was already good at them.
Real quick, before I get back into the wrestling, like, how did you get into competitive fight gaming? Like, how did that happen?
So Street Fighter 4 came out in like 2008, I believe. And we were just kind of all over it. And I didn't know that there was like, local tournaments and local scenes. So I found one at University of Waterloo and just started going and honing my skills and just trying to see like how good can I get at this. And yeah, I don't compete as much, but I still definitely try to keep sharp in those types of games. That's kind of how I got into it.
So all of this kind of carries into your persona, right? Because you
Yes.
said it's a fan. And one thing I love about your persona when I've had the opportunity to see you compete, which you might not know, but I have a couple of
Mm,
times, is
awesome.
like there's a very positive vibe coming off of that character.
Yes.
How did that persona come to be? I know you did say already that it's kind of like your personality turned up to 11, but sometimes we get pigeonholed into things. Sometimes maybe a persona is given to you. How did that character come to be? And maybe kind of what kind of hand did you have in molding it?
It's kind of hard to say because again, that was just something I had in mind of like because I've seen it done before where somebody is like an anime character come to life. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I wanted to try something along those lines. And I thought to myself, like, what makes you the happiest that you can be? And a lot of the time that came to mind was, or what came to mind was how I am at anime conventions or comic book conventions. So I'm just like the happiest kid in the world. Uh, and so I presented that idea to the coaches, and they're like, how are we going to do this? And I was kind of just given this free reign to like try things. And the coaches would just pick out what they liked, what they didn't like, because they're not really anime fans. They love wrestling and they don't know how to meld the two worlds together. And they're they're one and the same usually. But yeah, so I was just kind of like given that free reign to like try things and because it is a very unique character. And yeah, I just wanted to be myself, like turned up to 11.
If I may be so bold, one thing I noticed about your character, and I've only ever seen it in one other place, which is coincidentally a person we've referenced twice before, is Mike Bailey.
Yes.
Mike Bailey comes out and he's always got a smile on his face, like he just loves what he's doing.
Mhm.
And I've only ever really seen that also with you. Because when you come out, right, obviously very different image, very different persona, very different, your very colorful wardrobe and things like that. But you
Mhm.
both just look like you're happy doing what you're doing. And that's
Oh,
just such a good feeling that maybe isn't Like it isn't seen in wrestling enough these days.
Yes and no. But again, yeah, Mike Bailey is definitely he actually I'm going to tell you this story. He actually had a hand in kind of inspiring this whole otaku gimmick. So I was having trouble just trying to find what Nilo Reyes was as a wrestler. And Mike Bailey actually did a seminar at Crossbody. He pulled me aside and literally said, "Okay, what's your background? Well, sorry, what's your athletic background? And well, what's your nationality?" I said, "Well, I tried being Filipino, but I can't really be Filipino."
Okay.
So then he said, "Well, you like anime. Why don't you try something like that?" And that just kind of like the gears started turning then. So yeah, he kind of had like a hand in inspiring what the otaku is.
Sometimes the best answer is the most simple one, and it's right in front of you, right?
Yeah.
So before we head off, I do want to just ask you, realistic or unrealistic? Let's just stick to active competitors, not historic.
Yep.
Don't have to justify how it would happen, but who's the dream opponent that you would absolutely just love to get in the ring with, regardless of how it would happen?
And they just have to exist in any.
They just have to exist. I try to stick to people that are still lacing up their boots today.
Yes. If I could wrestle Kenny Omega, I definitely would.
Okay.
But if I could play Kenny Omega in Street Fighter, actually I have before, but in a face-to-face setting, I definitely would.
That's amazing. You got to
Yeah.
play Kenny Omega in Street Fighter?
Street Fighter 5, yes.
Oh man.
Yeah, just came across him online. It was insane.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe you could incorporate that into some sort of like three stages of hell match where one of the phases is a Street Fighter
I would
competition.
absolutely love that. Final stage is Street Fighter 6.
So I want to thank you so much for doing this. Before we sign off,
Absolutely.
can you just let people know where they can find you online if they want to follow you to stay up to date with what you're doing?
So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at elnilo16. And you can also follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Nilo the Otaku.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again for doing this.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Independent Wrestling Profiles. Please help out the show if you can with a like, subscription, or review. We'll see you next time.